Greetings. This is iVideo. My name is John Savers. I'm your host, and this is the series which takes a look at history in a broadly defined and tries to make sense out of various facets. We may look at history, the science, the art, military war. We may look at education, religion, and so forth. But this particular program is going to be in regard to World War II. World War II is a subject of considerable interest. We intend to look at it from several points of view. And in this particular series, we are looking at it exclusively from the point of view of the Holocaust. As I pointed out in the first program, I have been viewing films on World War II since boyhood, and they have continued. They have appeared on television. Many books appeared, many magazine articles. I'm sure that there are poems and songs and so forth, almost innumerable. And it is a very important event. However, we have looked at this particular event from the point of view of it being a historical event, something which is subject to investigation, which can be better understood by looking at facts and aspects of it, and from these to draw conclusions which are generally valid, that have a strength because of the facts and a breadth and so forth, which will make a possible a lesson to which might be helpful to future generations. Now, amongst this deluge, as it were, of historical information, there has been a snowballing of the area in regard to the concentration camps, and as the snowball grew, so to speak, it took on more and more of an exclusively Jewish memorial, as it were, a high holy day of some sort or period, fully equal to any holy day in the Jewish calendar. In fact, we have heard Jews state that it is the defining moment in their or event in their lives. So, with this in mind, a great deal of sort of proprietorship has seemed to be claimed by or asserted by Jews in regard to information relative to the Holocaust. We reject this. We do not see this as being an exclusively religious event pertinent to Jews only, but a facet of world history which all peoples, German, English, French, American, Canadian, and so forth, who are interested should by all means investigate and learn the truth of things. Now, such an attitude of this kind has landed people in Europe in jail. They are described as perhaps deniers of the Holocaust, either in whole or some aspect of it and so forth. Well, this would seem to be the beginning of an attempt to make the Holocaust a kind of global religious event, memorial, perhaps the single most important religious event for all the peoples of the world, not Jews only, and therefore denying it is simply an unacceptable heresy, and people who do so find themselves in jail and maybe I should be grateful they're not tortured and burned at the stake and so forth. But all of this we are opposed. We are thankful that that has not quite gotten that way here in the United States, although we do notice that in the Department of Justice there is a department which is exclusively Jewish, which has as its aim the hunting down of supposed Nazi criminals lurking in America as part of an immigration from Germany of citizens thereof involved. Well, we think this is ominous, and we'd like to see that particular agency dismantled, but that department. But at any rate, we do hope to get a better understanding of the Holocaust from this series. We are aiming ourselves primarily at the young folks whom we know have a public education system which is going to try to fraudulently misrepresent this issue. And in fact, most school students may still be told that 6 million Jews have died in the extermination process in these death camps, which are alleged to have been in Germany during World War II. So with this in mind, with the incredible misinformation which seems to be everywhere lurking in this particular facet of World War II, we have embarked upon this effort. Now, we want in this effort to call to your mind, this particular program, to call to your mind two very prominent historians, Dwight David Eisenhower, the Allied General Commander, General of all generals, that's what you call it, and future President of the United States, and also Winston Churchill, Prime Minister of Great Britain, who both wrote on this particular subject. But consider, Sir Winston Churchill and Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Allied leaders during World War II, were certainly not Nazi sympathizers. There's no doubt about that. Yet, when Churchill wrote his 6-volume series, The Second World War, and when Eisenhower wrote his memoir, Crusade in Europe, neither ever once mentioned a program of German mass murder and genocide, although the tales were very much in currency at the time the books were written. The use of gas chambers by the Germans to exterminate the Jews also slipped through the memory hole when Churchill and Eisenhower cataloged their complaints against Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany. As one revisionist researcher commented, was the weapon used to murder millions of Jews unworthy of a passing reference? Was our future president being insensitive to Jews? This is a citation from the Facts and the Myths about the Holocaust, page 6. Well, people, it seems to me quite certain that General Eisenhower and Prime Minister Churchill knew about the concentration camps. I think they also knew that they were not camps for extermination of the Jews or any other people. Therefore, although they understood the opportunistic usage during their time, they did not want to write books, I believe, based on their own personal vanities, which cited events which they knew were not truthful, that were fictional, and they assumed that this would be exposed in time. They wanted the books they wrote to be respected books, to be books which would last through history, perhaps 1,000 years from now, people going back to them to check on matters and so forth. which they may fear would not happen if they filled up their books with politically opportunistic but fictional matters to please the moment. So they ignored these things, and I think this is a very salient matter in the question. Now, as for Churchill, he had Jewish antecedents himself. His mother, Jenny Jerome, was of Jewish ancestry. He could not be, I think, without sympathy, therefore, to Jews. I think that his general policies were at one with those sought and admired by Jews during the time in the conduct of the war against Germany. So I look upon this as pretty strong evidence that knowledgeable people knew that the extermination of Jews was not going on in the camps, and that the camps were more or less similar to what FDR had for the Japanese, what the English had for the Boers, except the English ones were more terrible, and so forth. In other words, the event of the concentrating of hostiles, as it were, seemed like a rather normal event. But let's continue now. Our concern is simply with the fact that, believing of the Jews as they did, the Nazi solution to the problem was to deprive them of their influence within the nation by various legislative acts, and, most important of all, to encourage their immigration from the country altogether. By 1939, the great majority of German Jews had immigrated, all of them with a sizable proportion of their assets. Never at any time had the Nazi leadership even contemplated a policy of genocide towards them. It is very significant, however, that certain Jews were quick to interpret these policies of internal discrimination as equivalent to extermination itself. A 1936 anti-German propaganda book by Leon Feuchtwanger and others entitled Der gelbe Fleck, die Ausrottung von 500,000 deutschen Juden, the yellow spot, the outlawing of 500,000 human beings, Paris, 1936, presents a typical example. Despite its baselessness in fact, the annihilation of the Jews is discussed from the first pages, straightforward immigration being regarded as the physical extermination of German Jewry. The Nazi concentration camps for political prisoners are also seen as potential instruments of genocide, and special reference is made to the 100 Jews still detained in Dachau in 1936, of whom 60 had been there since 1933. A further example was a sensational book by the German Jewish communist Heinz Beimler called 4 Weeks in the Hands of Hitler's Hellhounds, the Nazi murder camp of Dachau, which was published in New York as early as 1933. Detained for his Marxist affiliations, he claimed that Dachau was a death camp, though by his own admission he was released after only a month there. The post-war communist regime in East Germany used to issue a Hans Beimler Award for services to communism. This is a citation from Did 6 Million Really Die? Historical Review Press, 1974, 3rd edition, page 3. Well, people, I will pause there to recapitulate. Now, we know from previous programs that as early as 1919, the figure of 6 million Jews being exterminated was used in a respectable newspaper. We also know that by 1933, the concentration camps were being referred to as death camps. And we also know that by 1936, the use of the word extermination of the Jews was in vogue, and that it applied only to the immigration, the out-immigration of the booting out, if you will, of German Jews from Germany and from Europe. But let's continue, and please consider the following. It is not widely known that world Jewry declared itself to be a belligerent party in the Second World War, and there was therefore ample basis under international law for the Germans to intern the Jewish population as a hostile force. On September 5, 1939, Chaim Weizmann, the principal Zionist leader, had declared war against Germany on behalf of the world's Jews. Stating that the Jews stand by Great Britain and will fight on the side of the democracies. The Jewish Agency is ready to enter into immediate arrangements for utilizing Jewish manpower, technical ability, resources, etc. This is a citation from Did 6 Million Really Die? Page 4, citing the Jewish Chronicle, September 8th, 1939. Now, people, I hasten to add that iVideo does not take a position in regard to the political merits of the ideology of the Hitler regime one way or the other, but simply to look at the objective facts and events therein and to draw conclusions, to draw inferences, to see what the implications are, and to compare those with those that are current, as it were, in the historical data presented to the public. Now, on that particular note, I would like to go ahead and Israeli historian Yehuda Bar told the Associated Press, as reported in the Portland Oregonian on December 21st, 1988, that every politician today is using the Holocaust to back his political agenda. On December 18, 1988, the Israeli newspaper Haaretz said that the Jewish people does many vulgar things, but the Simon Wiesenthal Center raised it to a complete level, the optimum use of sensitive issues in order to raise money. According to the director of Israel's Yad Vashem Holocaust Center, quoted in the same issue of the Israeli newspaper, Rabbi Marvin Heyer, head of the Wiesenthal Center, and the Wiesenthal operation itself are the most extreme of those who utilize the Holocaust. Now, this is from the Facts and the Myths About the Holocaust, page 10. Well, now you may say, how in the world do the Holocaust proponents have such success in the newspapers and TV and so forth? Well, consider. Through the intervention of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, we, Jews, have succeeded in muzzling the non-Jewish press to the extent that newspapers in America abstain from pointing out that any person unfavorably referred to is a Jew. This is from God's Covenant People, chapter 6, page 135, citing Bernard Joseph Brown, From Pharaoh to Hitler, What is a Jew? Chicago, Illinois, Consolidated Book Publishers, 1933, quoted by Douglas Reed in The Controversy of Zion, Durban, Natal, South Africa, Dolphin Press, Limited, 1978, page 341. Furthermore, please consider, the real masters are the advertising agencies. Some 90% of all newspaper ads are placed by agencies. Companies rarely place their own ads. The big auto firms, department stores, and airlines work through agencies. Here's how it works. Within the B'nai B'rith, the parent of the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, is a secret advertising lodge. The owners and managers of the advertising agencies that dole out the lucrative ads are members of B'nai B'rith, and quite often the heads of the advertising and promotion departments of your local newspapers are too. The Lodge brothers stick together, providing millions of dollars for the enrichment of the spineless and corrupt lords of the so-called free press. Irrefutable evidence of this unique and corrupt lodge is found in the book Conspiracy Against Freedom. On page 155 of this startling book is a memorandum from the files of the ADL. Dated October 28, 1974, the memo states, "The membership of Advertising Lodge B'nai B'rith includes people associated with advertising agencies, newspapers, magazines, radio and television stations, and others involved in the advertising business." The rest of the memo was nothing less than a declaration of war against Liberty Lobby's program and the Mutual Radio Network for carrying it. The Spotlight, November 17, 1997, page 4. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the ADL, this is an organization which was several years back exposed in San Francisco for having something in the order of 12,000 secret dossiers of people that it considered enemies or who were potential enemies or something of this kind. People familiar with such things immediately thought of the liquidation list that the Soviets used in the USSR. Moreover, in regard to this particular subject, and then we'll move on, but years ago when there were suggested oil peril which would emanate from the so-called Horn of Africa toward the oil transshipped from the Persian Gulf area, that is Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, that particular grouping, through shipping lines which have to come within the orbit, so to speak, of the Horn. So therefore, who controlled the Horn controlled the shipping lanes and would gain a powerful lever which could be used for political devilment within Europe or against Europe primarily, because these shipping lanes were bringing oil to Europe and elsewhere. Well, much geopolitical thought was spent in developing this idea, and I believe it probably had its origin basically amongst the Council on Foreign Relations. But at any rate, what I wanted to bring to your attention is that there are abstract lines of resources. There are resources of ideas and thoughts which have natural shipping lanes, and those shipping lanes are print media such as newspapers and books and so forth, and their distribution, as well as such areas as TV perhaps. But if some sort of correlative of this Horn of Africa were controlled by one group, and this advertising lodge within B'nai B'rith seems to qualify, then it could easily gain political leverage over the flow of this resource, ideas, thoughts, conceptions, and so forth, letting squeeze by only those that it liked. And I think this has happened intranationally, and I think it is far more dangerous to us than anything that would happen on the real Horn of Africa. And it is hardly something that our geopolitical people ever think about, because most of them are propagandists to begin with, and are not really in favor of the First Amendment and the free flow of ideas. But I believe that the leverage that the ad lodge of B'nai B'rith has gained over newspapers in particular and print medium, all those that require advertisement to gain the profits wherewith to operate, is dangerous. This power that has been gained is dangerous, and something should be done to break this concentration of power in this secretive organization, and never once more in the history of our country should ideas be imperiled by such an organization. Well, that's it. That's a wrap. That's all she wrote. This is iVideo. My name is John Savers. I'm your host. I appreciate your tuning in. I hope to see you again next time.